always be reflective and like self-aware. You could call it like self-knowledge. And what I mean by that is we usually have, or actually for some people it's actually pretty often and on daily basis, that they end up in a situation where they act as if they weren't in control of their own body. They explode emotionally, or sometimes it's not even emotional, but they react in a way that if it wasn't even truly them. Like in that moment, as it happens, it's not really them. It's something else controlling them. That's how people tend to describe that situation or that experience. And what I am trying to do right now is to always reflect and be skeptical of everything I do and of every thought which I have in my mind. And it works in a pretty simple way. It's like a skill which you have to train and make it better and stronger. So if you are going to start from today, you will try to be reflective, and the main point of this skill is to understand yourself much more. And so whenever you will do something you don't understand, you will be able with that skill to see it and be skeptical of it. Or if you are discussing something with a certain person, or you are in an argument with someone, that's even better example, there is always a reason why there is that argument. And most of the time the reason is that your opinions are clashing. So one person thinks something, the other thinks something else. In your case, it would be that you think that plastics are alright, and you are arguing with the person that's in front of you, and they are saying that plastics are not okay and you should avoid them at all costs. And in the end, you realize that plastics are wrong. And in this situation, where your opinion was actually wrong from the start, what you will do, and it's already like after this situation, but what you will do is that you will try to analyze why you reacted in that like aggressive way, why you even started the argument in the first place. Because in my point of view, even if I'm talking with somebody who has completely opposite opinions, I still listen to them, and I see no reason to start an argument. Because you never know, even that one person who has completely different opinion might actually give you an insight which you never thought of before, or you might even realize that actually their opinion is the correct one. That's why you should always be skeptical of your own thoughts, of your own ideas, but that's not the point of this lesson. The point is to be self-aware. And so when you end up in that kind of argument, you will analyze the reason why you were so defensive. What was the cause of you to react in such an aggressive and defensive way? And doing this is actually an art which you can develop. It's something that you can look at in a way that every person, including you, because right now I'm talking about self-knowledge and like self-observation, every person, and yourself included, is something to be like explored, and something that you would dive into very deep and discover all the secrets. And the point is to understand that person like as much as possible. Like that's the art of it all. And in this case you will do that with yourself. Like go deep and try to understand yourself as much as possible. Like if you read books from Robert Greene, there is a chance that you know of how our internal selves work, because he has actually written about it. It's not his creation. I believe he actually only like took ideas from other scientists and psychologists such as Carl Jung, and they talked about the fact that we inside us have certain things that were developed in our childhoods. That in our childhoods we went through a certain scenarios, certain situations, and that caused a development of something in us or within us. And usually it's something that happens due to our lack of something, like our parents didn't pay us as much attention, or it could be vice versa, so they were paying us too much attention, and that translates into like our adulthoods and into how we lead our lives as we are adults and we are grown up people. And since we know that something like this exists, it's actually something that's already out there, people know about this. And they also mentioned a concept about a shadow, that everyone has a shadow side. And actually that brings me to my own experience that actually happened a few days ago. I was speaking with my mother, and I was talking about a certain thing which I did, and she mentioned that it was my shadow. And for some reason, it triggered something in me, and I started to react impulsively and almost in an aggressive manner. Like not physical, but in terms of how I was speaking. I was super defensive, and I reacted in a way that wasn't like controlled. And after the situation, because sometimes even if you are super like self-observant, if you are always present, there can be cases when you don't realize it, or when you are just not present at the moment. And so I realized it after the fact. I believe it was actually the next day, and I thought about it, like what was the reason why I reacted in such a way? Why did I become so defensive, even though I was actually wrong? Because I was saying that it wasn't my shadow side, when actually what my mother was saying was right, that it was. And so I was analyzing why did I react in such a way, even though I was actually the one who was saying something that was incorrect. And even then, why was I so defensive? Even if I were correct, like what was the reason that I was so defensive? There was no reason. Like I could hear her out and then say my opinion in the normal way. And that's how you will go through every kind of situation that you might end up in, where or when you react in such a way that isn't really controlled and is super impulsive. Like you either do it as you are going through that situation, that's a bit higher level. It can happen once you are actually training the skill of self-observation for quite a while. And that's what sometimes happens to me now, that when I'm in a situation, I'm acting impulsively, I'm acting in a way that isn't controlled in any way. I sometimes actually realize it at the moment, but it's very difficult to step out of it, to like snap out of it. Like once you are already in that impulsive reaction, it's very difficult to stop it, even if you are already conscious of it. But since you are conscious of it, you can manage to do it, but it's not easy. And so if you will have that skill pretty good and pretty developed, then you will be able to do it throughout the actual scenario. Otherwise, if you are starting off, the ideal thing is to just try to be as present as possible, try to analyze each thought, each idea, each like action you take as much as possible, and it will eventually develop into a skill that when you will go through such a scenario, you will be able to analyze it, if not right away, but afterwards, like 1 hour later, or 2 hours later, or maybe 2 days later. It doesn't matter. The point is that if you will do it as much as possible, the distance from that thing happening to your analyzation will shorter much more, and in that way you will be able to sometimes not even start doing that impulsive reaction. Like you will be able to stop it before it even begins. That's the ultimate skill which you want to develop, and I am not really or truly at that state yet, but I can already do it in many cases. Like if I am listening to somebody and suddenly I almost want to become aggressive because their opinion is completely wrong and I want to correct it, I stop myself, I step back, I analyze it, why do I want to react in such a way, and I can like find a different solution so that I won't start any kind of pointless argument. Because we already know that starting an argument is actually completely pointless, because the person that's on the other end will only get defensive and they will only strengthen their own opinions. But other than that, the point of this video, to summarize, is that if you have a situation when you react impulsively, you don't react in a stoic and controlled manner. What you will do is to develop a skill of self-observation and presence. It's something that you have to combine, because if you are lost in your thoughts, you won't really be able to self-observe. You won't really be able to self-observe. And so in that way you have to develop presence first, then self-observation. And you will do it in an easy way. So after any kind of situation when you react impulsively, you will analyze it as fast as possible, in terms of when you will like recall what you have done was wrong. And once you recall that it was wrong, you can analyze the situation. Sometimes it won't happen because you don't have that skill, but if you will try to be conscious of it as much as possible, you will always remind yourself of it in your brain, that you have to analyze your actions, your thoughts. Like whenever you think a thought that's not good, you don't want to have it, and you might not realize it right away, but after a few days, since you are always reminding yourself of that self-observation, you will like recall what you said in your mind, and you know it was wrong, so you will analyze what caused you to think that way and maybe how you could avoid it in the future. Because here the point is, we learn from our mistakes, from the impulsive behavior which we have like done or performed, and we will try to not do it or avoid it completely in the future. And so you will try to do it as much as possible. After every action that you recall, you will analyze it, what was the cause, why you felt that way. Maybe there was something from deep within you that caused you to react in such a way. That's what I mentioned about like the shadow side and the things that we bring with us from our childhoods. You can take it as a game, as something that, as a skill that you can develop, as I mentioned many times, but mainly as a game, as something fun to do, something enjoyable, to just analyze yourself as much as possible. And the things that you can like come up with that you wouldn't even believe are true about yourself is something crazy. But if you can understand yourself much more, you will be able to tap into your creative powers, into your natural powers that are within you, but you can't tap into them because you are not truly yourself, which means you have to understand yourself before you can become yourself. And in order to do, you need to develop the skill of self-observation. And so hopefully I managed to explain it as I planned to. Hopefully you understand everything. If not, you can always comment something down below, and I will try to give you the best possible answer which I can at the moment. And if you enjoyed this kind of a video, you can watch this video next.